go first.
Okay.
All right, so this is my 250-word paragraph. Both the Port Huron statement and the letter from Birmingham jail show the hidden problems in America after World War II. Tom Hayden writes for the New Left, attacking a system that chooses money and comfort over human freedom. He argues that the old school liberals have become too lazy and just follow the crowd. Similarly, Martin Luther King attacks the white moderates who claim to support him but care more about keeping things quiet than actually getting justice. Both authors reject the way things are, arguing that a peaceful society is fake if it isn't actually just. Still, the two movements are very different. Hayden's group consists of wealthy white college students who are fighting a feeling of emptiness and boredom with their modern life. On the other hand, Martin Luther King's civil rights movement is about survival against real violence and segregation laws. Hayden uses more academic, non religious language, while King relies on faith using Christian teachings to show why segregation is bad. Despite this, the big picture is very similar. Both men believe that America needs to look back about like on its roots to continue forward. They agree that true democracy requires people to stand up and disrupt the status quo instead of waiting around for things to get better. Whether fighting for basic rights like King or for better culture like Hayden, both authors show that post war America was broken and that real progress only happens when people force the issue through direct change. And then my question, which we can discuss, is while Hayden and King both argue that short term force is necessary for a fair society, is it truly the most moral decision in every scenario, considering that pushing the status quo may lead to retaliation violence? Furthermore, how many lives are worth dying in crossfire if it means to get a more just society?
Um, I can go next if that's okay. So my 250 words are so what stood out to me most in both the Port Huron statement and the letter from Birmingham jail was both of the theme between both of them was the author's frustration with complacency. Um, they focused on different issues, but both said that Americans in both different groups have become too comfortable in accepting an unjust society. Um, Tom Hayden says that many Americans seem content with the post war prosperity, but a lot of this comfort is only superficial. Um, he says that this prosperity might be better called a glaze above deeply felt anxieties about their role in the new world. Um, this Hayden is arguing that people feel powerless not because they don't care or they don't have concerns, um, but because they've become disconnected from, I guess, like political participation and they're not active in democracy. Um, King, in the letter from Birmingham, expresses similar concerns, but in the context of civil rights. The What was most interesting to me is his criticism of the moderate whites. They're more devoted to order than to actual justice. Um, Rather than openly defending segregation, these white moderates delayed progress by just saying, let's be patient. Um, so this silence and complacency again is just as harmful as not um, or as opposing or supporting, segregation. Um, so I just think it's interesting that two truths can happen in both saying democracy requires active participation um, and to achieve a justice society. Um, and then my question is, um, if both King and Hayden believe that ordinary Americans had become too accepting of this injustice, why did they propose different paths? And kind of what seems more, um, what would be more successful? The just more political participation, or I guess more through action and civil disobedience that Martin Luther King suggests.
Do you want to go first, Logan, or should I go?
Um, I kind of want to go last because I kind of want to expand a little bit on my question. But
Okay. Okay. Here's my paragraph. Both of these documents are really talking about the same issue. America has made a lot of promises about freedom and democracy, and by the early 1960s, it was becoming hard to ignore how many of these promises were broken. Hayden is writing as a young college student, or from the perspective of this, who is looking at all the post-war prosperity and see who's who are comfortable but not really free and plugged into these careers and consumer culture instead of participating in democracy. King is writing in a different POV from a jail cell, making the far more urgent point that Black Americans were never even let into that comfortable world to begin with. And what is interesting from both sides is that their criticisms are to like not really as like the obvious villains, but the people in the middle, the the unions that stopped fighting for everybody, the politicians who made deals with segregationists, and the white pastors who told King to be patient. These were the people that they were like really tackling here, right? And where they differ is really a matter of where what was on the line for both of them. For Hayden, his critiques for coming from a student is that the system is like about the system, while King's critiques were mainly um, for the people that were shutting like him out, I guess. And but like together, these two documents tell us something important about this like period of time of post-war America. In terms of my question, I was gonna say that both King and Haynes argues that the biggest obstacle to change wasn't the people who openly opposed of it, but the people who considered themselves allies. Do you think that it is true today? And who plays like the new role of the white moderate in current political debates?
and then I can go ahead and read this one now. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail and Tom Hayden's The Port Huron statement both propose America's desire for comfort has blinded them from making the changes necessary for the sake of the nation. The Port Huron statement primarily focused on citizens' need for a direct involvement with all aspects of their lives, going from government, economic issues, and social issues. It is argued that neither the right nor the left of the government serve the needs of the people, as the parties are connected in a way that prevents them from acting towards positive growth. Grassroots actions by people in control of their government would enable true changes to occur. Similarly, MLK challenges the notion of comfort by stating that those who are comfortable do not voluntarily give up their comfort. The Reverend notes that the church has lost its grasp on society, and rather than standing for the good, they remain inactive and allow injustice to prevail. MLK feels that white moderates have taken a backseat approach and allowed the nation to continue practicing unjust practices. Both MLK and Hayden argue that for change to occur, inaction must cease. Both writers argue that nonviolent activism is what must occur for change to happen. Complacency kills momentum and must be purged to address what they see as the issues facing the nation. In a post-war America, complacency had festered and allowed issues to fester and remain unaddressed. By pushing for action, both writers felt that America could grow to its potential and meet the ideals set forth for the nation. Um, and for this question, I've kind of got two ways to phrase it. I don't know if you've ever taken a philosophy class at Tech, but One of the things they talk about is affluenza, which is this condition where it's just the constant chasing for more, um, just more, 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 and chasing comfort rather than actually making change. Um, but the question itself is, was complacency the greatest obstacle faced by the various activists of the 1960s? In a way, is this a case of affluenza?
So should we start with Joyce's question or lead with that question?
I mean, I guess we could lead with Logan's question, and I feel like mine will tie in at some point.
Okay. Can you reread your question, Logan?
Yeah.
So,
Was complacency the greatest obstacle faced by the various activists of the 1960s, and in a way, was this the case of affluenza? And my argument for that is that pretty well, yes. Um, People want to be comfortable and they don't want to give up their comfort. Of course, it's hard to make change when people are comfortable. And it's pretty clearly stated to me in the Port Huron statement when they say they fear change itself, since change might smash whatever invisible framework seems to hold back chaos from them now. Um, don't know if anybody wanted to go from there.
um, I kind of, I don't know if this could be considered affluenza. Um, because when I think of that, I think of like extreme wealth or like very intense materialism. Um, so I don't know if that necessarily, like, I think it could with some people and like certain sectors of society, but I feel that this comfort is more um, just kind of they I honestly think some people are just like post-war, they're just kind of checked out. They don't want to be involved, you know?
Mm.
I
Well,
have oh, sorry, what were you saying?
let's sort of like MLK directly kind of backs that when he says that um, they have not made a single gain in civil rights without determined legal and nonviolent pressure. And it's that, end of the war, that post-war euphoria. It's sort of like this is the end of history. You know.
Yeah.
But
Um,
can I add something on the for like the civil rights movement?
Yeah.
Or is that like in scope? I think that like complacency was not really the biggest obstacle. I think like it was an obstacle, but it was also that they faced a lot of like organized violence and a lot of resistance from the state, right? And like for example, they were like turning fire hoses on protesters in Birmingham, and that wasn't like complacency. That was like low key brutality. So I think for the
Yeah.
civil rights movement,
Yeah.
maybe complacency is like not the greatest political obstacle, but the violence and the pushback from the state would like be a equally as big obstacle, and it's like kind of equal. But for the other article written by Hayden was like not really the case there.
I actually kind of disagree a little bit. I think complacency was still a huge factor in the civil rights movement because, so like you're right, the police brutality and the violence that happened because of even these nonviolent protests were really difficult. But I'd argue that because lawmakers and politicians, even just the general public, were complacent, a lot of these things were dragged on a lot longer than they needed to. If people were less complacent and wanted to take action a lot sooner, a lot less people would have died. But because people were willing, like people saw police brutality, people saw the injustice and saw the pushback, but they continued to be complacent for way too long. So I think that was still a huge barrier for the civil rights movement.
And I don't think I worded that question the way I sort of wanted it to. Um, it's sort of elaborating on it. So there was the Huron statement directly calls out the fact that the Dixiecrats were sort of in a way in a coalition with more conservative Republicans. And when LBJ eventually does pass the Civil Rights Act, that he ran and was elected as a Dixiecrat, and him passing the Civil Rights Act felt like such a betrayal to the Democratic Party. That's what flipped the political leanings of the South so that every state in the South is red now. That betrayal in their mind of the Dixiecrats to pass that Civil Rights Act.
Yeah. Should we move on to the next question or keep going?
Sure, we could do somebody else's question.
My question, I feel like we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I guess I kind of asked, what do you guys think? Even though there was kind of a similar goal of like becoming more politically involved and pushing against the government for these like unjust things, do you think now then what is like more effective, political participation or kind of the civil disobedience?
I think I kind of like answered that earlier a little bit, but in my opinion, it'll be political participation because at least going by like current things that have happened, like even with social media, like we can do a lot of disobedience, talk a lot, say a lot, even destroy a lot, and a lot of times it gets swept under the rug or just someone will get shot, and that it honestly ended kind of like all in vain. And I think civil disobedience is important, but like the true change actually comes from like policies and laws being
Like
passed.
putting who you want in office, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've talked a lot about that kind of all semester with this class. Like this goes back to when unions started, when unions were trying to have a voice and it didn't really do anything. So I feel like you can connect, like it really only matters if there's an administration that is wanting to hear what the citizens have to say. So
Well, I think in your question originally it had said pitch alternative methods essentially.
mhm.
MLK basically says that um, disobey unjust laws, right? And throughout reading MLK's texts, I always think to myself, he's not calling for us to blow up the government, right? He's not calling for a new nation state to be created. He wants to participate in the American experience. He just wants injustice to be removed from that system.
Mhm.
And I think he pushes to not follow these unjust laws and continues to push for nonviolence because that's sort of what the Constitution outlines for people to do to make change, right? And in my mind, that's his way of trying to take part in the American experience without calling for an entire teardown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we want to answer my question, again, this kind of ties into what we're talking about. Just a reminder for the question. It was while Hayden and King both argue that short-term push is necessary for a fair society, is it truly the most moral decision? If pushing status quo sometimes results in violence. And to be clear, both of them say that nonviolent push is what we should do. But kind of bring that into honestly, like, even if you think of like BLM and everything that happened in 2020 and onwards, like people, let's say the organizer of the protest, like the organizer thinks, I want this to be safe. A lot of times, just what happens nowadays, someone gets shot, someone gets pepper sprayed, except someone gets something happen to them. So like knowing this in the society where even if you like you rally up a peaceful protest, someone might die, is it the most sound thing to do? Like just morally speaking.
I think that peaceful protests are still moral, and to rally them is still moral. because it is one of our like rights as citizens of the United States, and to push the boundaries of who is in office. But I do think that it is dangerous because, I mean, it takes a single step in the wrong direction. Like, literally, you could walk towards the wrong person and it could turn into a violent situation. I do think there's a fine line, but I don't think that the dangers of, or the potential dangers of these peaceful protests makes them immoral.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you.
Mm.
Like 99%. I was just thinking, like, if I, like, let's say was in those type of situations they're put in, and just knowing what would like happen, even like nowadays, honestly, what happens at some protests, there has to be a sense of like sometimes guilt, knowing like, wow, like these
Yeah.
people died because they joined me, you know.
There's
There
that
definitely
that
could
sense
be.
of sorry.
Go ahead.
There's that sense of guilt, but there's also the fact that if stuff like that doesn't happen, that's not a headline, right? That stuff
Mhm.
happening is the
Um,
headline, and that's what gets the message spread.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Wesley, do you have a
mm.
question or
Well, I have what?
your question? Can you repeat your question? Sorry.
Oh yeah, my question was, so both of them argue that the biggest obstacle wasn't the people who actively opposed it, but the people who they considered as allies. Do you think that this is kind of true today in our political landscape, and who plays the role of the white moderates in current political debates?
I do think it depends with what's going on right now.
Yeah, there is a lot going on.
Um, I think it is honestly hard to have a voice, but I'm not sure that today it's the allies that are the biggest obstacle. But that might just be my ignorant, naive, I don't know. I don't know who would play the white moderates now. Maybe the white moderates.
I don't know that there would necessarily be it the in cause for inaction now. There's less. I feel like there's less breaking up these small groups. It's more so a lot more left or right, and the
Mm,
opposite would be whatever is the opposing side. So not necessarily just one subsect of the population, because left thinks one, right thinks the other, and that's that sort of stopping point. I
I do
guess
think there is a group of people that sit in the middle and are like, well,
This might. Oh, sorry. Continue.
no, go ahead. You go ahead.
This might be. I just have 2 points. This might be a little controversial, but I do agree with you. I think there is a big group of people who sit in the middle, but I think the what the white moderates now are sadly the young people like us who choose not to vote,
Yeah.
because I agree many options are terrible, but by kind of like us college kids now choosing not to vote, we are acting as the white moderates trying to do nothing,
Yeah.
sadly.
I don't vote, unfortunately.
just sort of tying that back into the text. Um, Hayden says in the Port Huron statement that our work is guided by the sense that we may be the last generation in the experiment with living. So I guess that sort of ties in where it's this group that is just not taking part because they think, oh, what's the point? You know, there's even in the 1960s, there's this point where people just think, what's the point? And then you hear the same thing. If you hear somebody that says they don't vote now, they say, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
Mm.
Unfortunate, but true.
Yeah. I don't think the quote unquote like being the white moderate means somebody thinks like, oh, I'm intentionally trying to harm society. It's just more like a lot of times it's like they don't know what to do,
I,
because and it come just kind of be like trying to be objective. Obviously, it's hard for me to be objective for people in the 1960s, but they had these anxiety of what would happen if Black kids went to their school? What happened if Black people were at my job? So I'm trying to understand it. Like, most of them were just scared. But yeah.
I mean,
I also think like the whole non-voting thing is like people kind of think, well, what is my one voice gonna do? Like, say, I think areas are very political divided, and so if you have a differing opinion in this one section, like, or in your district, whatever it may be, I think a lot of people aren't called to vote because it's like, oh, what am I gonna do? You know, what is my one voice gonna do? And I think maybe people felt like that back then, is like, yeah, I disagree with it, but what much can I do about it? You know?
I see. Oh well, this is what was I gonna say? Loki, I have to leave in
Wait, yeah,
2
we've
minutes.
talked for
Sorry.
Yeah.
30
We had a
minutes.
good conversation.
yeah,
We answered all the questions, right?
yeah.
Mhm.
That should be
Oh,
all.
okay.
I'm gonna cut the recording off here.